Since Roe was overturned, there have been 3 cases that we know about. There's probably been more. There have been 3 cases of a mother and teenage daughter being arrested, where the mother was trying to help the teenager get abortion care. These are the latest abortion numbers from Gallup, which is a really well-known polling group, and they found that the gender gap between men and women on whether or not they identify as pro-choice is 20 points.
A podcast was recently released that featured women who underwent IVF and whose pain medicine was swapped with saline.
It's not like we needed more proof, but it doesn't hurt to have more proof. So that we can combat these things effectively. But people have been banging the drum, right? We've been sounding the alarm that men are becoming more and more oppressive in their approach when it comes to controlling women and their reproductive rights, and women in general. It's just one of the steps in controlling women, and a major step is controlling women's reproductive rights and bodily autonomy. What I'm about to show you guys is not shocking to any of us that that are in these spaces and that talk to men and deal with men on a day-to-day. Like, we know men are like batshit crazy nowadays when it comes to this stuff. We know that men are, it's really crazy because, you know, I'm an 80s baby and a 90s child, right? It's really wild to think that even before women had, you know, before like the like women, like men couldn't rape women, you know, like even before the bill was passed to protect women in the 90s and 94 with the one that they signed with the crime bill, that men back then were more pro-choice than men now. You see what I'm saying? Like back when women could, back when it was still legally acceptable for you to rape your wife, those groups of men, like that group of men, that generation and the generation prior, the generation that was raping their wives, that group of men were like, nah, reproductive rights, women should be able to get abortions. Like that group of men were like, yeah. And it's crazy because when I show you this chart, you'll see that it starts in 1995. The bill was passed in 94. So in 95 is when this chart starts, and it was at its highest in 1995. That men were like, yeah, women deserve the right to get an abortion. It's just very interesting.
I'm really going to need someone to explain to me what is going on with American men right now, because this chart ruined my day yesterday. It ruined my day. These are the latest abortion numbers from Gallup, which is a really well-known polling group, and they found that the gender gap between men and women on whether or not they identify as pro-choice is 20 points. There is a 20-point gender gap. 61% of American women say that they're pro-choice. Only 41% of American men do. And to be clear, there's always been a gender gap on abortion rights, so the gap itself is not a surprise, but there has never been a gap like this. Before Roe was overturned, the biggest that gender gap had gotten was about 10 points. In 2022, when Roe was overturned, it was at 13 points. Now we're at 20 points. That means that American men's support for abortion rights is dropping off a cliff. My guess is that this has something to do with younger men in particular and the way that they're starting to skew more conservative. This is from a different poll from a group called Perry Undum, which does great polling on abortion if you're interested. And they focused on younger men specifically, youngish men, 18 to 44. And what they did was they asked them right after Roe was overturned, so July 2022, do you not see abortion as a major voting issue, right? And at that point, about 20% of those youngish men said, no, I don't see abortion as a major voting issue. By the time November 2024 rolled around and we really needed those pro-choice votes, by that time, that number had jumped to 39%. Now 39% of younger men were saying, no, abortion is not a major voting issue. The only thing that made me feel better yesterday was going back to that Gallup poll and looking at the breakdown by party, because Democratic men are getting more pro-choice, right? About 66% of them in 2021 considered themselves pro-choice. Now we're looking at 85%. So Democratic men are getting more pro-choice, but American men as a whole, again, their support for abortion is dropping off a cliff.
So let's break down a little bit of why men are becoming more and more conservative, right? Number one is the lack of education, the lack of critical thinking. I would be doing a video on that right after this. I'm going to do a video on how men just lack critical thinking abilities and thinking skills. Is ridiculous. But that's one of the reasons, and that's by design, right? Um, the education system does not teach people to think critically, especially men. It wants to keep men dumb and docile, and thus, when you start these campaigns, these anti-woman campaigns, these these anti-abortion campaigns, these these attacks on working class people campaigns, men are susceptible, right? But even though they belong to these groups of people a lot of times, and even though their women belong to these groups of people, and their mothers and their aunties and their sisters and their daughters belong to these groups of people, they are very susceptible, right? Because of their lack of education and their lack of critical thinking. That's one way that this is happening. But the reason why, a major reason why men are skewing more and more conservative is not only because of the red pill movement and that the chokehold that right wing media has in social media. That's a huge factor. But those young men are becoming more. They're having bigger bouts of despair when they look towards their future, because not only are they seeing a lack of ability to get a woman, right? They're also seeing a lack of access to resources. This is very much connected to socioeconomics. Men not having resources, men not being able to get an education, and being convinced that an education is something not worth having. Men thinking that you know that the world, men being entitled, and then the world not being given to them is affecting them, and all of these things. And then, now swoop in the right wing red pill, aka right wing, aka red pill, red pillars, and the red pill ideology to fill the void and to sheep herd and to funnel these young men into these right wing establishments. And you see how it shows up politically, because men don't even know the first thing about comprehensive birth control, and they don't know anything about abortions whatsoever. They don't know about women's anatomy. They have no idea. They have no fucking clue. But they are told abortion's bad. Abortion's bad. And I've been seeing men with these stupid ass fucking hats that says Trump is 2-0 versus women. I've only seen the hat like 2 or 3 times, and they were both times worn by black men, and that has to be noted. But that is for a lot of men, that's what it's about. It's like, I'm not getting anything as a man, so I'm going to make sure that women lose as well. Even if they don't understand it, they don't even know why. They don't know why. They don't even get it. They don't even know why they care about abortion. They don't get it. They don't even understand. But they just know that it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt women. Yeah, it's gonna hurt men too, but it's gonna hurt women more. And they also know, though, that if you can control a woman's reproduction, then you can control the woman in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, because women are still gonna have babies. So if you can control their reproduction, then you can control the woman. And women and men have been exercising that ability over women for a millennia or two. And this is just a continuation of that. That's where this, to me, that's where most of this stems from, as far as I'm concerned.
If you thought living in a pro-choice state was going to protect you from this kind of shit, obviously not. Before I explain to you why this happened and what the story is, I just want to point out that since Roe was overturned, there have been 3 cases that we know about. There's probably been more. There have been 3 cases of a mother and teenage daughter being arrested, where the mother was trying to help the teenager get abortion care. That's who these laws are targeting. So let's talk about what happened here. And keep in mind that all of the information that we have so far is information that's come from cops or prosecutors. And so you have to take it with a grain of salt. They are known for misrepresenting things, mischaracterizing, lying straight out, especially when it comes to cases like this. So just so you know that going in. Abortion is legal in Pennsylvania until 24 weeks, and the cops say that this teenager was 20 weeks when she went to Planned Parenthood to try to get an abortion. Planned Parenthood said, sorry, we don't perform abortions at this point in pregnancy, because sometimes, even if a state limitation is like at 24 weeks, a clinic doesn't necessarily go all the way up to 24 weeks, right? And so they couldn't help her. And so her mother got abortion medication online. So the teenager took the abortion medication against FDA guidelines, because the FDA only wants you to take it up until 10 weeks of pregnancy. People do take it after, though, obviously, and in this case it worked. And they buried the fetal remains in the backyard. As is often the case when someone is turned in for a pregnancy outcome, this teenager was ratted out by a friend who went to the cops and said that this thing had happened. Now, Pennsylvania law does not allow you to arrest abortion patients for having an abortion, right? You can't do it. Even though this teenager took this medication against FDA guidelines, it doesn't matter. You can't arrest her for abortion. That obviously really pissed them off. If you read the statement from the police, which I linked to in my newsletter, you can tell in their tone that it irritates them that they were not able to charge her with an abortion. They use really stigmatizing language. They say things like the mother and daughter abuse the corpse of a newborn baby, just really ridiculous shit. And so they really wanted to figure out a way to punish this mother and her daughter. And so they found a roundabout way to get around this prohibition on charging abortion patients. What they did was essentially what we have seen cops and prosecutors do in every criminalization case since Roe was overturned. They charge them with things like abuse of a corpse and concealing the death of a child. And the reason they do that is so that they can punish women and girls while claiming, we're not charging them over abortion. What do you mean? We didn't arrest them for having an abortion. This has nothing to do with abortion. In fact, the district attorney in this case said, these charges have nothing to do with abortion. It's about what came after. And again, this is something that we are seeing across the country. When Brittany Watson, Ohio, was arrested for flushing her miscarriage, they had charged her with abuse of a corpse. When the young woman in Georgia was arrested for having a miscarriage, they charged her with concealing a death. This is how they are going about criminalization. And the anti-abortion movement is paying attention to those trends. This is a piece I wrote earlier this week talking about some of the criminalization tactics that I've been tracking. And one of them is that anti-abortion groups are trying to get Republicans to propose national legislation that would require the burial or cremation of miscarriages. And the reason they're doing that is because they can see that that is what cops and prosecutors want, that they are looking for a way to arrest abortion patients without having to run afoul of this prohibition on arresting abortion patients. And so the anti-abortion movement is trying to make it as easy on them as possible to arrest people for their pregnancy outcomes. They want to create improper and proper and legal and illegal ways of disposing of your miscarriage. There is a lot more to talk about when it comes to this. And at the end of the day, this all comes down to fetal personhood.
That right there is so alarming. It's so alarming. And like she said, it doesn't matter even if you're in a blue state or a red state, they're still coming after you. They're still coming after you no matter what. They don't want women to have any autonomy whatsoever. They don't want women to be protected whatsoever. This is all about controlling the woman. This is all about controlling her body. This is all about controlling reproductive rights and bodily autonomy and things of that nature. They want to turn women into what do they call them? Birthers and whatever other language they were using, dehumanizing language they're using nowadays to just make vessels and things of that nature. They just want women to be vessels for babies. That's it. Not only so they can have, more people to feed the, the capitalistic machine, but they also need people for war, and they need consumers, and they, you know what I mean? And also they just need women to be under the eyes of men. They just need women to be controlled by men. If you are a man and you come across this type of information and this doesn't shake you to your core, then you are a part of the problem. This should be very alarming and very upsetting. You don't need a daughter. You don't need a woman. I don't care. I don't care. This, as a human being, should shake you to your core. Very Orwellian. Very Orwellian. Women getting abortions, not Orwellian whatsoever. Not Orwellian whatsoever. Women being controlled, their bodies being controlled, them being watched and being surveilled, that is Orwellian. A friend ratting them out and then having the fucking Gestapo come in and arrest them, That is Orwellian. That's that's Orwell 101. You know what I'm saying? That's crazy. Fahrenheit 451 type shit. Like, that's wild, man. This is crazy. This is crazy. This is nuts. And men are just sitting back and letting this happen. Where are the protectors? I thought men were the protectors, right? Shout out to all the Democratic men. I'm going to give Democratic men a round of applause. We already know the leftist men. You know, I'm not a Democrat. I don't identify as a Democrat. I'm way more left than a Democrat. But yeah, you know that the men on the left are definitely in favor of women having bodily autonomy, as you can see. But the problem is that men overall, like she said, are moving more right. There are more and more men are moving to the Republican establishment and moving away from the Democratic establishment. And for anybody that acts like Democrats and Republicans are exactly the same, which I've said that before, but it depends on what we're talking about. I know that it's not black and white, right? I love to make sure we have these conversations in a very nuanced way so that we understand. It's even if the people at the top don't care, right? And I would say that the people at the top don't care, but the people who vote, like the people who identify as Republicans and the people who identify as Democrats, they are not the same group of people. Again, they're not the same group of people. Are they perfect? No. Are Democratic men perfect men? No. Are they good men? Maybe, probably not. Probably not. But if we're grading on a curve, absolutely, Democratic men are exponentially better than Republican men. Democratic men are better than Republican men. This is just another example of that. Democratic men having empathy, and you can see how politics and empathy go hand in hand. And men love to remove themselves and otherize themselves and act like how they vote has nothing to do with how they treat their women at home. But I'm telling you, without a doubt, it does. And that's why women are steering clear of red-pilled right-wing men. And that is why women are by the year 2040 or whatever the fuck they're saying, 80% of women are going to be single, because by 2040, 80% of men are going to be fucking right-wing. That's the connection. That's the correlation. The further men go right, the further they go away from women. Women are not authoritarian. They're not thinking like that. It's that you're moving in the wrong direction. And I bet the same, like, if you looked at that breakdown, that 61%, right? How it was the 61% of women in this country. You're talking about white women in that as well. I bet money, if you remove white women from that, or even if you go Democrat, do the same thing, go Democratic women versus MAGA women or right-wing women or Republican women, it's fucking crazy. Probably 90-something%. I didn't look at the chart, but I'm sure I didn't even look at it. If it's 85% for men, I bet you it's 90-something% for women. The 61% is because of all the right-wing women dragging it down. Same thing. So all the women of color and oh yeah, they're 90%. They're like, hell yeah. It's because the country is still predominantly white people. That's why, you know what I'm saying? It's not I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying like white people are inherently bad. I mean, we know it's systemic. It is about the system. It's about racism in this point. And this is the perfect example of intersectionality. That's why I want to bring that up, because women of color and black women are like, nah, we need to be able to have abortions when we need to have abortions. And it is MAGA minded white women and white men predominantly pulling that shit down. They're dragging it into the fucking dirt. It's spectacular to watch, man. And just for good measure, I just want to show you how little the system cares about women. Like they just don't care about women at all. This is this is wild.
This story is recirculating, and I think it really highlights just how much women's pain is ignored in medical settings. A podcast was recently released that featured women who underwent IVF and whose pain medicine was swapped with saline. And just for those that have never gone through IVF or who don't know anybody who has gone through IVF, IVF is extremely painful. It is a surgical procedure with a huge needle that goes through the vaginal wall before going into the ovary to suck out eggs. And for months, hundreds of women were given no pain medication during the egg retrievals because a nurse at the fertility clinic had been stealing the fentanyl and swapping it with saline, which is horrible. That is not good. What's really bad is how these women were gaslit about their painful procedures. They were told to calm down or that they were hysterical, and many described their experience being like a living nightmare, being told that the excruciating pain was all in their heads. One of the women who was interviewed said that she knew something wasn't right. She was alert and could feel every aspect of the invasive procedure. The fentanyl she'd been given to dull the pain, she presumed, just didn't work on her. She remembers feeling like her body was wrong and it was all her fault. And because women's pain isn't taken seriously, this went on, again, like I said, for months. For months. We go get an IUD placed. We're told that it will be a little pinch just to breathe in deeply. It doesn't hurt that bad. You have a biopsy that needs to be done inside your uterus. You don't need pain medication. We'll just dig our way on up there and laser off anything that we find. You don't need pain meds. This procedure that's known to be very painful, I'm not going to believe you when you tell me that you're still in pain. And rinse and repeat. And women's pain continues to be ignored.
It's just a continuation. I just want you guys to know that all these things are linked. All these things are linked. Ignore women's pain. And you know what's crazy is that women will go through all of this stuff so that they can have babies. Like, that's the thing about women. Like, women are still actively trying to have kids, even in a system that is punishing them for having kids, that is not making it safer for them to have kids. And then you add to that, they don't even recognize or acknowledge when they're going through pain. It's truly amazing how little credit women get. I'm not even playing. Like, it just, when you think about it, because I'm a man and I know how selfish I am as a man, I just go like, damn, imagine if this were me. Like, children would never be born. If you just today just gave men uteruses and were like, nope, you got to have kids. And women, nope, you can't have kids. And God just mixed up all of our body parts and was just like, swap, right? Like wife swap, but like a reproductive organ swap. No babies would be born. Humans would die out in one generation. Men aren't having kids. Men aren't having kids. Like, we're not signing up for that. All the laws the same. Everything's the same. The whole system is the same. Nothing changes. The only thing that changes is now men have to have babies. Babies will not be born. Would not be born. And women are doing this, having babies in this climate, in spite of all the odds, everything stacked against them. The whole system is against them. Nobody's hearing their cries. Men aren't protecting them. The men in their lives are abusive when they have the kids, and they're still having babies. And y'all up here talking about, I want to hold women accountable. For what? I'm waiting. For what? I want to hold men accountable. I'm holding men accountable for everything I just acknowledged, but also I want to hold the men accountable for not standing up and not being loud and speaking up against all the inequity that women have to face every day. All the protectors, where you at? We all ain't protectors. I know that. It's not most men. It's not the vast majority of men. Where's the 20% of men? Can I get 20% of men to start talking about this shit, to start standing up for this shit? Checking their homies? Like, can we get that? Can we get to 20%? We're at like 2%. Can we get to 20? It would help a lot. It really would, man. We need more men. We need more men to stand up. We need men to stand up. I'm sorry, we need men to stand up. The women can't do it on their own, sadly. They can't do it on their own. They're doing a great fucking job. They're fucking beyond pulling their weight. We need the men to show up, and not all men, not even most men. I'm just asking, can we get 20%? Can we get to 10%? Jesus Christ.